Good evening to all of you, those who are attending the webinar of IIT Alumni Center, Bengaluru. I'm Ashok Misra. I'm the president of the IIT Alumni Center, Bengaluru, IITACB for short. Just to give you a little brief, IITACB was set up about 10 years ago, and we are trying to be the facilitators for high-end projects to flow from the industry to the IITs. And in this endeavor, we have held several workshops and held a very successful IIT industry conclave in February. While we were following up on the recommendations of the conclave, this COVID-19 hit the world and we all went into a lockdown. We turned this into an opportunity and we started our webinar series on topical areas, and we've had several webinars, 7 to be exact. You can go to the YouTube and look at them, but most of them have been in technical areas ranging from COVID to materials to 5G and many, many more to follow. Today we are having a different kind of a webinar, and let me first introduce the people who will be on this webinar. There are 2 stalwart directors of the IIT system. We have Professor Timothy Gonsalves, who is the founder director of IIT Mandi, and he is concurrently a professor of computer science at IIT Madras, where he also was involved in a few startups. The moderator for us today would be my very good friend and contemporary director from the IIT system. We were directors around the same time, but it's Professor M.S. Ananth. I would rate both Timothy and Ananth as the 2 very entrepreneurial directors. As you will see, IIT Mandi was set up in a very remote area, and you say IIT Mandi, but those of you who have been to Mandi, it's 40-50 kilometers beyond Mandi in a place called Kaman, which is actually as remote as you can get. People talk of locational disadvantage. Today you will see how Timothy has converted that disadvantage into an opportunity and the wonderful things he has done. Ananth set up the first ever IIT research park at Madras, which is flourishing. They had a 1 building, and I don't even remember the square footage there, 5-6 story building, and then the second one is coming up, a leader in that manner. So I'm very privileged. We are very privileged to have both Timothy and Ananth on this webinar today. Ananth, of course, has visited Mandi several times. Even I had a chance to visit. It is something to go and see and see it for yourself and then believe it. Before I hand it over to Timothy for his presentation, a few housekeeping matters. Whatever comments you want to give to the panelists and or to the other participants, please put it in the chat box. All your question answers, but be brief, 1-liner, 2-liners in the Q&A box, and Professor Ananth will take care of the questions at the end of the presentation by Timothy. I must also mention that these webinars have been very successful. We have had over 500 registrants almost routinely, peaking at 1,050 in one of the webinars. And even today, we have well over 500 registrants for this webinar. So with these few introductory remarks, we from IITACB welcome Timothy Gonsalves and M.S. Ananth to this webinar. Over to you, Timothy.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. I think Professor Ananth, are you going to say anything at this point, or should I go ahead?
No, I'll just say a couple of words if you don't mind. Yeah, I just want to set the background. I want to say that the university today still has many of the characteristics that the Renaissance thinkers thought of as the basis. But basically, they were looking at research and teaching. And what's happened in recent times is that the intellectual property rights have become very important, and therefore innovation has become very important. And since the university has always been the source of innovation, that's another important aspect. And social relevance has become important because the taxpayers don't want to support systems that are not relevant to them. So I think Timothy is going to cover all these. We look forward to hearing from Timothy about what he did at Mandi and how he integrated all the requirements of a university into a beautiful landscape. I must say that Timothy went there because of the hills. He has a love for the hills. But anyway, so over to you, Timothy. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share the screen. Can you see the screen? Is it shared?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it. Excellent.
Okay. Yeah. So, as thank you, Professor Mishra and Professor Ananth, for the introduction. As Professor Ananth mentioned, I came to Mandi for the first time in January 2010. In fact, that was my first visit to the Himalayas, and I'd taken up the job of director of this new institute without knowing what the place was like, except that it was in the mountains, and I come from the mountains in Ooty and in the Nilgiris. So, if you look at the temples of learning in India, in ancient India, often we went for wisdom to the Himalayan mountains, to maybe a remote riverbank. Someone sat under a banyan tree to get inspiration for learning, for wisdom. Now, in modern India, on the other hand, if you look at the temples of learning, the IITs, the leading universities, almost all of them are in crowded, polluted cities. They're in cities that are today are infected by COVID. So the question is, can this change, or should it change? In fact, this was a question that we asked ourselves when we were starting IIT Mandi. And so what I'll do is I'll talk a bit about the genesis, what the location is. I'll talk about the strategy that we adopted, and then I'll take you through some of the developments of IIT Mandi in a few areas, in education, in research, in connect to society, and so on. And then at the end, I'll share with you some of the outcomes of our journey over the past 10 years. Back in 2008, 2009, the government decided to start 8 new IITs, and one of them was allotted to Mandi in Himachal. The location chosen was a 500-acre site near the village of Kamand on the left bank of the Ul River. This village had a population of under 200 at that time. The 500 acres consisted of 200 acres was an animal husbandry farm, and 300 acres of forested mountain slopes. So Himachal itself is a peaceful state with a very high human development index, which is the 3rd highest in India. It has a low population, about 7.4 million people, and 90% of this is rural. In fact, Himachal has the highest percentage of rural people in the country. The economy over here is largely agrarian, and there are some pockets of industry, mainly pharma industry, tourism, cement, and of course there is a few pockets of education over here. What you see here is the IIT campus on the banks of the Ul River. The campus stretches from the lower right corner along the river, and you can see the flat green area is the animal husbandry farm, and it then goes around the mountain to the left center. This is another view. You can see a few stables and not much else over here. So the challenges that we faced, as all the other IITs, was of course how to hire and retain good faculty and staff, how to attract the good students, and starting without anything to equip the labs and library, get research funding, get industry to come for placements and so on, and also to construct a campus, a fully residential campus with academic buildings and residential buildings, sports facilities, etc., etc. Now, some of the specific challenges that we have over here, which are different from the other IITs, is that our campus is 45 minutes drive from the nearest small town, Mandi, which has a population of just about 40,000 people. The road goes over a steep mountain pass with a 1,500-foot gorge on one side, which is fine for people from Himachal, but people from the plains of India find that a bit scary. The nearest major city is Chandigarh. There's a 6 to 7 hour journey by road to get to Chandigarh. Now, what this means is that if a faculty member at IIT wants to attend, say, a 1 hour meeting, it takes about 2 days of travel to go to Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, have the meeting and come back. In addition to this, Himachal has a lot that people from the rest of India are worried about. Cold winters, mountains, landslides, wild animals, leopards, bears, and so on. There actually aren't any leopards over here to worry about, but the fears are there. A more serious problem is the lack of an ecosystem. When a faculty member joins an institute, he comes with a family, he wants good, or she wants good schools for the children, spouses want jobs, and elderly parents and so on would need medical care. All of this is not present, was not present over here. So in fact, many people felt that out of the 8 IITs that were started, IIT Mandi was fated to be at the bottom, to be number 8 always. We, of course, did not believe that, and we set out to prove them wrong. Now, so what is the strategy that we should adopt to become a leading research university around the world? One obvious idea is to copy or clone one of the old IITs. It's tempting because that's an existing model. And you see, for instance, IIT Roorkee has a lovely main building. IIT Madras has a lot of banyan trees, and of course, they're doing very well in many academic respects also. However, when we looked at it, particularly 10 years ago, the IITs, while they were excellent in India, were still falling short in many measures compared to some of the best global universities. So we said, let us look outside India for examples. So we studied a number of the leading research universities in North America and Europe, in Singapore, and we looked, do they have characteristics that that help them achieve prominence? So we found that some of them are very small, some are large, some are largely undergraduate, some are largely postgraduate, some are private, some are public. There seem to be very little in common. One thing that we did find is that all of them have a strategy of working for the local and the national needs and national priorities. Now, this comes in different ways. In some cases, like in Caltech, some of the national labs are run by the university. In other cases, there's industry nearby, as in Stuttgart, and the industry brings in the national priorities and needs. And so this is something that we realized, that the path to technology excellence is through working on local and regional and national problems. And fortunately, India is a country with a very large number of problems, and which is very good for engineers. There's lots for us to solve. So the strategy that IIT Mandi chose was to focus on a few areas, to try to become among the best in the world in those, and pick areas that are regional relevance and national relevance, regional, the Himalayan region, and in India as a whole. Because if we take the problems of our region, we live here, we understand the problems, and we're likely to come up with the best solutions for those. Being a small new institution, we decided that we need to build strong partnerships with like-minded institutions, both in India and outside India, educational institutions and academic institutions. The problems of society are inherently interdisciplinary. The solutions do not fit within narrow academic disciplinary boundaries. So we decided that we would try to foster a culture, have an organization, academics, and so on that cut across discipline boundaries. And finally, we believe that IIT Mandi has a strong advantage in its location. So we decided we should exploit that. Now, the IITs are perhaps best known for the undergraduate program. IITs are reputed for excellence in teaching, because we also are known for research. So the first thing we looked at was the BTech program. And at that time in 2009, one batch of BTech students, about 97 students, had already been admitted. And so that was the first priority. So we said, as I said, we could have copied the curriculum of one of the older IITs. I came from IIT Madras, or IIT Roorkee was the mentor institution. But we decided instead, let us take a fresh look at engineering education and figure out what education should be doing to educate the students who are going to be working for the next 30 or 40 years. So we first decided to look backwards. Looking at engineering over the last several hundred years, for a long time, engineering was more of an art. If you see some of the leading engineers, people like Leonardo da Vinci, Robert Fulton, who developed the steamboat, Samuel Morse, the telegraph, these people transformed society through their technology and products that they developed. None of them were engineers or scientists. They were artists. They were painters and so on. And they took up engineering as one of their many activities and were extremely successful at it. So for a long time, teaching of engineering was akin to apprenticeship, that an engineer would go to a skilled, a student would go to a skilled engineer in order to acquire the experience and the wisdom of the master. Engineering design was often done using tables, design rules, and so on, which were written down. Perhaps many of them, some might have been calculated, some came from the experience of the master engineers.
I'll interrupt just for a bit. If you could come closer to the mic, Timothy, or speak a little louder.
Yeah.
And also in the bottom, there is a pointer. You can use a laser pointer rather than your, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a laser pointer.
Okay, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Just trying to move this. Okay. Okay, I don't see the laser pointer, but anyway.
Okay, there's a box there in which you can select the laser pointer, but if you don't see it, it's on left-hand side, left-hand corner. Otherwise, don't worry, go ahead.
Okay, anyway. Okay. So before before World War II, in teaching of engineering, there was some teaching of science, but again, it was largely lip service. Now, during World War II, the influence of science and engineering really grew a lot. There were a number of wartime developments, radar, sonar, radio, code breaking, encryption, then tremendous use of operations research for logistics, and of course the Manhattan Project for developing the first nuclear bombs, where some of the leading physicists of the Western world were involved. And so governments and the public and universities realized that science could make a big difference to engineering. Towards the end of the Second World War, Vannevar Bush, who was the uh, uh, science advisor to the US president, wrote a report called Science, the Endless Frontier. In this 45-page report that he submitted to the president, he made a very strong case for government funding of basic science research. And he pointed out that basic science research drives applied science and engineering. And in fact, this view was bought by the US government and governments elsewhere and by the universities. And there was very generous funding from the National Science Foundation and the US military to research universities like MIT, Stanford, and so on. So the curricula in these universities for the undergraduates changed drastically and became very much science-based. So there was much more dependence on doing analysis, mathematical modeling, computer simulation, and so on, and with less on hands-on practice. Interestingly, a few countries, particularly Japan, Germany, and the Netherlands, retained a strong emphasis on practice in their engineering education, while bringing in some science base also. So with the science base, there was a tremendous flowering of technology and technology-based products. And things were going very well, but then there were also some disasters, some problems. For instance, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington State collapsed when there was a 70-kilometer-an-hour crosswind, a very mild crosswind. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded on takeoff due to a faulty O-ring seal, and all the crew members were killed. So these were some of the failures of engineers who were perhaps too much science-based and did not have enough practical experience. So the pendulum of engineering education started to swing back. At MIT, there was an initiative called Conceive, Design, Implement, and Operate for giving undergraduate students hands-on experience in product design. At IIT Madras in about 1992, a number of faculty started the Tenet group and started developing technology for immediate use, initially in the area of telecommunications. Over the last 2 decades, IIT Madras faculty and students have started over 200 startup companies and developed a wide range of products and technologies in these. One of the key things over here was that in addition to their studies, a number of interested undergraduate students and master's students and even PhD students started to work on these industry projects along with the faculty. So there was, in a sense, a team of the IIT faculty, the students, and industry working together to develop technology. Given all these experiences and the study, we decided at IIT Mandi to have an undergraduate curriculum that was very much based on, that emphasized learning through projects throughout the 4 years. Students would take up real-world problems. They would work in teams, in interdisciplinary teams, in order to solve problems. They would deliver solutions to customers in society, and so on. So if you look at our curriculum, in the first year, students do reverse engineering. They dismantle an existing product, understand how it works. In the second year, they work on product development. They have to build a prototype based on some idea of theirs. In the third year, they go out into society and do essentially a market survey. And in the fourth year, they do the traditional major technical project. So, so they get experience on all aspects of the work that an engineer would do in a product-oriented design company. To give you some examples, during the second year, all our undergraduate students, all second year BTech students, have to work and do a design practicum. They choose a problem of society, and within 1 semester, they have to design a solution for that, build it, and show that it works in an open house, all with a budget of 25,000 rupees. What you see on the right over here is an automated cooker made by a group of 5 or 6 second year undergraduate students. The ingredients are fed in at the top. The recipe is fed in. A microcontroller controls the ingredients are chopped up. Then they fall into the frying pan. They get cooked, and the dish comes out at the end. Other teams of students have worked on things like, say, voice-controlled wheelchair, intelligent drip irrigation, where the irrigation is controlled by the amount of moisture in the soil, clothes dryers that work in winter, in the monsoon, and so on. What you see on the left over here is a 3D printer. We had bought a 3D printer for about 12 lakh rupees. These students in 3 months built a 3D printer at a cost of 25,000 rupees. And the spanner you see in the center is printed by their 3D printer. On the right-hand side is a Spider-Man outfit, which a batch of students made using a couple of, using a household vacuum cleaner and some tubes from a scooter. So now, one thing that we found when our students work on these projects is that many of them started to use machine learning, to use Python programs, and to do fairly sophisticated kind of programming in their second year projects. This is something that we were a bit surprised to see how easy it was to have automated control and so on by using existing available Python libraries. Now, this machine learning is actually a part of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of AI has been in the news for quite a while, and we are told that AI is going to be the solution to almost all problems. Now, there have been some successes of AI, such as face recognition in Facebook, web search, some machine translation, and so on. At the same time, if you look at a country like India, there's been relatively little economic value. If you look at our GDP and most of the people, there's been relatively little impact of AI on life so far. And in fact, some studies that have been done even in the West have found that most AI-based startups have not made much money. So the question is, there is this AI bandwagon, and as an educational institution, as an IIT, should we get on it or should we not get on it? This was something that we were grappling with a few years ago. Now, one thing that we looked at is that AI has become more successful because of changes in computing technology and communications and so on. So we looked at, did an informal survey of some recent disruptive technologies. For instance, if you look at things going from the printing press in the 15th century to the telephone, the internet, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Now, the rate at which these disruptive technologies spread globally has been shrinking as time goes forward. So essentially, what we see is that the rate of change in society is growing at an exponentially. So essentially what that tells us is that even though AI may not have been doing very well in the past, in the next 10 or 20 years, it's likely to do very well. Now, of course, AI depends on certain computing power. And computing power has been driven for the last 45 years by an empirical law called Moore's law. In 1970, an integrated circuit had about 2,000 transistors on it. By 2016, an integrated circuit had about 5.7 billion transistors on it. And if you look at the rate at which the performance of computer hardware has been doubling, every 1.5 years it's been doubling for the last 50 years. And this trend doesn't show any signs of coming to an end. Every little while, someone predicts that we're reaching the limits of technology, and innovative engineers find some way to get around it. So we expect that Moore's law will continue to operate for the next 10 to 20 years at least. Now, when you look at machine learning essentially works sort of like human learning, that we take data from existing systems and find some patterns in that data, and then use these patterns to handle new scenarios and to predict for the future. So this is based on something called the law of large numbers from statistics, in which the behavior of a large population tends to a predictable normal distribution. Now, one of the technologies that support machine learning is the Internet of Things. Machine learning requires data, and Internet of Things is a set of inexpensive sensors connected to the internet by which we can get data. For instance, until recently, the IMD, the Indian Meteorological Department, would spend maybe tens of lakhs for each weather station. And since they were so expensive, they could only be installed in major towns like district headquarters, maybe with a distance of 50 kilometers or so between them. With Internet of Things, one can build a weather station of a few thousand rupees. It becomes feasible to have the weather station in every farm or field. It may be less accurate, but with a very large number of weather stations, we can actually correct for these inaccuracies. Similarly, if you look at other sensors like GPS, web cameras, motion sensors, etc., the costs have declined from lakhs of rupees to just a few hundreds or thousands of rupees. So what this means is that now we have vast amounts of data available, and there's going to be much more and more data available about every locality, about every person, about every system, every mechanism, and so on. So this means that machine learning, which is one part of AI, is becoming much more useful and much more likely to be beneficial in the near future. So a number of faculty at IIT Mandi, seeing this trend, have been applying machine learning to practical problems. A few years ago, some faculty in computer science and electrical engineering teamed up with a private company called Aendra in Bangalore, the medical instrumentation company. They spoke to doctors in some hospitals about the needs of cancer patients, and they realized that there was a need for automating the detection of cervical cancer cells from some images that are taken. So this device which you see here was released by Aendra. It's a portable scanning device which can scan for cervical cancer. And the software algorithms in this are based on machine learning developed here at IIT Mandi. Similarly, faculty are using machine learning to help mobile operators manage telecom networks. So here again, you see that we have faculty, students, and industry working together to come out with useful innovations for society. In the Himalayas, landslides are a problem, particularly during the monsoon season, and many lives are lost due to landslides. Now, if a landslide could be predicted even a few minutes in advance, traffic could be stopped or houses could be evacuated and lives could be saved. Typically, landslide monitoring systems cost lakhs of rupees. Two faculty at IIT Mandi, along with some of their students, have developed an inexpensive landslide monitoring system using low-cost sensors and machine learning. This is available at a cost of 20,000 rupees per system, and it's been installed in a number of places in Himachal and has been able to detect and give early warning of some landslides already. So this is another example of how AI can actually be used to help society. A third area where our faculty are working on applying AI to help society is in agriculture. If you look traditionally, a farmer decides on how to manage the crop, when to plant, how much fertilizer to give, when to apply pesticide, and so on, based on knowledge of market prices, etc., which has been gathered over many years. Now, the problem today is that the traditional patterns are being disrupted, one by globalization, where there is free import and export of agricultural produce, which affects the prices and demand, and secondly, climate change, which affects the growing pattern. so that the experience of one's of the farmers, fathers and grandfather may not be useful today. So here, what we are working on at IIT Mandi is a project called the Farmer Zone. This is funded by the Department of Biotechnology, and it's a national project. Over here, we collect data from many sources, agriculture-related data from the farmers, the fields. We collect weather information, we collect information about seed varieties and so on. Market information is collected, cold storage information and so on. All of this is put into big cloud-based data repository, and then machine learning or data science algorithms are applied to advise the farmer when to plant, what to plant, when to fertilize, and so on and so forth. So this particular project, which has partners from India, UK, and US, is being led by IIT Mandi on behalf of the Department of Biotechnology. Currently, we are working with potato farmers, and eventually this will extend to about 20 major crops around the country. So what we've seen over here is that out of the many different aspects of AI, machine learning is something that can be applied in the real world, that can actually give value to society even today, and certainly it will tomorrow. So based on our experiences with R&D, in 2018, 2 years ago, we decided to replace the C programming that was being taught to all our BTech students with a 3-course sequence on data sciences using Python programming. And this is the first time any IIT has done this. So all our undergraduate students, whether in computer science or civil engineering or electrical engineering, go through an introduction to Python and machine learning in their first semester. In the second semester, they learn probability and statistics, again with a lot of lab work using Python. And in the third semester, they apply this to machine learning, again with Python. Now, in all of these 3 courses, they work on real-world problems taken from all branches of engineering. They work with big data sets of millions of records. In a few weeks after joining IIT Mandi, students are able to process such large data sets. Last year, we decided that we would start a BTech program in data science and engineering. The data science essentially is at the confluence of machine learning, computer science, computer systems, and mathematics and statistics. This is the first such BTech program in any IIT. So what I've given you is an overview of our undergraduate curriculum, which is project-based, and where our undergraduate students work on research problems, and the research that our faculty do feeds back into the curriculum of the undergraduate students. Now, in order to take all this work to industry, to society, we need to have industry. And Himachal is a state with very little industry. So in 2016, we set up IIT Mandi Catalyst, a technology business incubator, in order to foster industry in this area, high-tech industry. Over the last 3 to 4 years, Catalyst has obtained about 23 crores of funding from different sources. It has supported over 75 startups, and some of these have won awards and so on. And it's doing quite well, trying to build up an industrial ecosystem around IIT Mandi and in Himachal. Now, another important aspect, as I think Professor Ananth mentioned in his introduction, society today is no longer willing to just fund IITs just for education. Society expects to get return from IITs. So, and this is something that's important for us to pay back to Indian society for setting up the IITs. It's also important for engineers to understand society, because engineers build technology and products for society, so they need to understand the society. Now, IIT Mandi is an elite institution and located here in this very serene rural setting. And of course, our vision says that we should work for the rural area also. In fact, our BTech curriculum has about 12 to 25% of the courses of the credits are in humanities. We also have an unusual project that I'll talk about, the interactive socio-technical practicum. So our students study local society, and to our surprise, we found that they also learn from local society. There's often a tendency for people who come from big cities in the plains to look down on villagers in the mountains and think that they are inferior, primitive people. But they actually find that these are very sophisticated people, and the students are able to learn from the villagers. So during the third year, our undergraduates do this unique project where they go out into the villages and they study the impact of new technologies on the villages. For instance, they look at how do you keep track of, how does the medical officer of the district keep track of the supply of medicines in remote villages? Can modern technology, SMS, mobile networks and so on be used for this? What is the quality of milk? What are the needs of rural women? And so on. So these are many kinds of projects that are studied by our students, and at the end, they come up typically with a technology impact report. Now, one of the interesting developments here was that the faculty who worked on some of these projects found that the rural women had aspirations for education, for business opportunities, and so on. And so they set up a society called EWOC, Enabling Women of Command, to help rural women start businesses and further educate themselves. Interestingly here, there was one example where the IIT faculty and students started out thinking that, well, a business for rural women is to take handicrafts and sell them outside. It turned out that the rural women don't want to make handicrafts. They want to learn English, they want to operate computers, they want to do something more modern than handicrafts. So in fact, these are the type. So EWOC has now started fostering such businesses. Other work for the local area, we have a biodiversity research lab, which is working on medicinal plants of this region. And some of these are being commercialized in the form of herbal tea. A group of faculty from electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and economics are working on developing electric autos that will work in the hill states. A faculty from physics is working on developing some economically ways of utilizing dried pine needles, which are a problem in the forests over here. So you can see that these are just a few examples of R&D for the Himalayan region by our faculty. In fact, about 1/3 of IIT faculty are working on problems of the Himalayan region, and about 15% of the funding that they've received is for these projects. To give you an example, an indication of the desire to work for the society, when COVID came up, within the last couple of months, our faculty have submitted or started over 20 projects, R&D projects, to tackle different aspects of COVID. EWOC has helped local women to make face masks, and these are being used in IIT and also being sold in the region. IITs are to make a name globally, and so not only do we work on local research problems, we also work on global R&D. And one area that I'll touch on is in advanced materials. When we started out trying to decide on what kind of research to do over here, some people said, you're in a remote location, you should focus on theoretical research, don't try to set up sophisticated labs, it's very difficult to do such things in a remote place, and so on and so forth. We had an emeritus professor, Professor Subrata Ray from IIT Roorkee, who was advising us, and he was originally a physicist who became a material scientist, and he said, this is don't listen to this. Good research requires experiment and theory, so go ahead and set up very good research labs, and we followed his advice and spent over 100 crores over the 10 years on setting up very good research labs. These labs are shared institute facilities which are open to anyone in the institute, and to make sure that they are well utilized. So there's a very good cooperative culture. In fact, this helps students to work together also. So the first experimental chemists were hired in July 2010, and we gave them some empty rooms and in order to do their research. Within 18 months, they had bought the equipment for doing the research, hired and trained PhD students, and the first material synthesized in IIT Mandi was in, I think, September 2011, and a paper was published on this by May 2012. Also in 2012, our faculty got a very prestigious project from Intel in the US to develop the next generation VLSI photoresist material. This was driven by a very unusual person, Ken Gonsalves, who was in University of North Carolina, and he came as a visiting faculty to IIT Mandi. He has a network of labs and collaborators in different parts of the world, and he, making use of that, the faculty at IIT Mandi were able to do better than the state of the art. The state of the art was 22 nanometers in 2012. And as you can see, in 2014, they had fabricated materials here at 20 nanometers, and by 2018 had gone down to 10 nanometers. This research is now being used by SCL Mohali in their work. An unusual spin-off of this advanced materials research is that one of our faculty here was working on solution-blown nanofibers for the last year or two. And when the COVID crisis came up, he realized that he could make membranes material from these nanofibers, which results in very low-cost N95 masks. He's now looking for some industry that can commercialize this. So I'll now move on to our campus, which is one of the unusual, unique aspects of IIT Mandi. As was mentioned, we were also the first of the 8 new IITs to start using our campus. And this is because we took a very different approach to campus development. Most new universities take the approach of planning the entire campus, constructing all the buildings, and then after several years, when everything is ready, then shift to the new campus. This has a couple of problems. One is that buildings are only a small part of a campus, and sometimes we find they're not the most important part. Secondly, during those several years while the institute is functioning from a transit campus, faculty put down roots in some nearby city, their families get comfortable there, and they're reluctant to move to the new campus. So what we did is that we had an incremental approach of saying, let's build one building and start using it as soon as it's ready, and then build more buildings and use them as and when they're ready. So this helped us to develop the campus, to refine the design of the buildings, and also to set up all the essential things that are needed in a residential campus, like shops, a good campus school, supply of milks, social gatherings, etc., etc. And the result is that today, 98% of our faculty live on campus, even though it's in such a remote place. So we had a three-pronged strategy. First, make use of the existing stables and so on for that were here when we came. Secondly, use pre-engineered technology to quickly construct some buildings, and then have the major construction with permanent concrete steel buildings. So in June 2011, this showed our stable with a few horses. 9 months later, we had renovated the stable and installed our first sophisticated instrument, an X-ray diffractometer in that. And in May 2012, we had an industry conclave over here with, as you can see, in the stable, which housed horses just 9 months earlier. By September 2012, our first new building was ready, and the first batch of BTech students shifted to the command campus. We also used some low-cost LGSF light-gauge steel frame technology and so on. By 2015, almost all our students were on campus, and many faculty had shifted here. By January 2020, as you can see In the foreground is what we call the South Campus, and in the left middle is the North Campus. These have about 1.4 lakh square meters and about 1,655 students. And this campus is fully functional. It's also a very livable campus because the amenities in it have been developed over the past 6 to 8 years. So that whatever you want, whether it's an ATM machine, you want medical care, school, go hiking, play games, and so on, it's all available and all working very well. This is some of the activities on our campus. The faculty and staff families get together periodically and cook some exotic meals. Our students go up hiking into the mountains in the snow, they go down to the river, and there are various other such activities. So what I've shown you so far is some of the developments, some of the stories of that we've gone through over here in the undergraduate curriculum, in socially relevant research and activities, and in some advanced technology, and also our campus development. This is only a small fraction of what's been going on at IIT Mandi. There's a lot more. There's not enough time to cover everything. But now the question is, we come back to the original question. If you recall, when we started, people said that we would be number 8 out of the 8 new IITs, and we'd be following all the others. So what is the reality today after 10 years? We see that IIT Mandi has taken leadership nationally and in the IIT system in several initiatives. In 2016, we led an initiative to increase the number of females joining IIT, BTech in IIT. At that time, IITs had only 8% females in BTech, and thanks to the initiative of IIT Mandi, by which we introduced the supernumerary scheme, all IITs now have doubled to 17%, and IIT Mandi is leading the pack with 20.2% in 2019. As I mentioned, we were the first of the 8 new IITs to develop a new campus. We have a very good relationship with German universities, and thanks to that, in 2018, when the Ministry of Human Resource Development decided to initiate the SPARK program for academic collaboration with other countries, IIT Mandi was chosen as the nodal institute for Germany, one of the leading countries. When DBT wanted to set up the Farmer Zone project, a very prestigious national project, they selected IIT Mandi as the lead institution for this. So they're leading in several aspects. Individually also, last year, one of our young assistant professors, Dr. Manu Devadevan, won the Infosys Prize for Humanities. This is perhaps the most prestigious academic prize in India, and normally it goes to more senior researchers and academicians. Looking at our student strength, because IITs, after all, are, one of our important roles is training students. As you can see, we have grown steadily from 97 students in 2009-10 to 1655 students, and the number of PG students has risen from being 100% undergraduate. We now are only 47% undergraduate and 53% PG. We also have a significant number of foreign students, and we have graduated 7 batches of alumni. Ultimately, IIT Mandi will have about 5,000 students. Everyone talks about ranking these days. So how do we do in ranking? We look at the Indian government's National Institutional Ranking Framework, NIRF. As an engineering institution, nationally, we are number 20, and among all the 23 IITs, we are number 13. Among the 8 new IITs, we are number 4 in 2019, and in Himachal, we are number 1. So you can see that when we compare ourselves to the other 8 new IITs in various respects, we are nowhere number 8. In some places, we are number 1. In some places, we are near the top. Our alumni have been getting good placements right from the first batch. They have joined companies and universities similar to where the alumni of older IITs go. Some of our students have done very well. Nitesh Kumar is a BTech student at IIT Mandi. While being a BTech student, he has participated in international para badminton and has so far won 13 gold, silver, and bronze medals for India. Last year, a team of second year BTech students won the National Hackathon, the ACMW National Hackathon. They competed against about 180 other teams, which consisted mostly of senior undergraduate and PG students. And these second year students from here won this. What we see is that IIT Mandi has made a name for itself nationally, and our faculty and students are achieving laurels, are doing very well, on par with some of the other IITs, sometimes even better than them. What are the lessons from our journey over the past 10 years? Some of the lessons are, firstly, success depends on people, depends on outstanding faculty and outstanding students supported by a very good staff. Now, how do we attract and inspire people? The way we have done it is to define some compelling USPs and then follow these, provide a supporting environment for these. The USPs in our case are project-based learning, working for society, boundaryless academics, not having disciplines and departments based on disciplines, and a strong ethos in the institute of working cooperatively so that to solve large problems. Many of our young faculty, I'm proud to say, and students have bought into these and have worked very hard in order to achieve the laurels that I've mentioned. We have capitalized on our location advantage, and in the first decade of our existence, we have taken the lead in some areas nationally. In the coming decade, in the next few years, I'm sure that IIT Mandi will become a leader globally, thanks to hardworking and exceptional faculty, students, and staff, and also a lot of well-wishers from elsewhere who have helped us in this journey. So with that, now thank you for your attention, and we can open it up for discussion and questions.
So thanks very much, Timothy. That was a wonderful talk. I think everybody enjoyed it. And, we will open this thing for questions, but I think Professor Ashok Mishra wants to say something just about that.
Timothy, what a wonderful talk. You took us to the beautiful campus of Mandi, which I've been to, and you are inside the campus, and I can tell the attendees, when you're inside the campus, you see mountains all around. It's not a valley, it's like a bowl. It's like if you've seen the movie Shangri-La, it's like the Shangri-La that I've seen in real life. So it's a fantastic campus. I had chance to interact with the faculty and students, and as you saw from the presentations, they're all very enthusiastic, very happy to be in this location because it provides not just education but so many other things which other locations will not provide. And very impressive that some faculty members, one in humanities and one laurels, very prestigious awards like the Infosys Award and so on. And Timothy touched upon, just for the viewers, a little bit about his international collaboration, but I can tell you there are some very strong, meaningful collaborative programs with some leading universities in Europe and in the States. And if you talk to those faculty members, they are very, very enthusiastic about interacting with IIT Mandi. The remote location turned into an advantage. Lots of first, as I see, something to emulate. And as you heard him, a locational disadvantage for IIT Mandi command, where it is in the hills. The first ones to move into their own campus amongst all the 8 IITs. I mean, the others were in metropolitan cities and so on. The other thing which I saw is that it's one of the IITs which is probably the only one which is spending so much time on the development of the local people and their needs, which is remarkable, which is what we need for an inclusive India. And lastly, the number of startups, 75. It's very, very impressive for where you are sitting. So thanks again, and over to Ananth, and I will not interrupt now.
Timothy, I have half a dozen questions. The first question is, first of all, the large number of people appreciating the beauty of the campus, although you didn't quite show them the full beauty. Maybe you should take a video as well.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that somebody wants to know is, did IIT Mandi destroy the beauty of the Himalayas by building a college there? This is the usual question about development versus environment. Would you?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer this, this is in fact this was something that troubled me when the first time when I came here and came over the mountain and saw this beautiful valley. My God, how am I going to build an institute here for 5,000 people and not destroy it? So the first thing that we did is that we commissioned an environmentalist, Dr. Ranjit Daniels, to do a study on the campus, and he prepared an ecological management plan in 2010, which has now been published, and it's available here in the links. You can read it. So essentially what he did is this plan showed us how we could develop the place without destroying the environment and keeping the environment. So we have followed this. Also, one of the mandates we gave to the architects was that we'd like IIT Mandi to look like a Himalayan village, like a Himachal village. And I think when you look at it from a distance, they've managed to do that fairly well. We have, during the construction, there has of course been a lot of digging of the soil and so on. Every year for the past few years, we have our students plant 1,000 or more trees on the campus. And so if you look at our South Campus particularly, it's fairly green now. And within 4 to 5 years, the whole campus will look a bit more like it used to look earlier. So we have certainly tried to minimize the impact on the area. Our faculty are also working on things like solid waste management, biogas generation, and other such green type of research.
Okay, there's a question that's really addressed to other IITs, but I think you can try and answer that. The question is, have other IITs learned from IIT Mandi, and have they implemented some of the socio-tech approaches developed there?
The IIT system is something where we all learn from each other and we copy each other. There's a lot of peer pressure and so on. To give you a couple of examples of things that have been done, in IIT Madras, I think 2 or 3 years ago, they had introduced something in their first year curriculum, which is very similar to our reverse engineering. And so some of the faculty professors from there had come here and seen our reverse engineering project. IIT Bombay, I heard the electrical engineering department has implemented a second year project in the electrical engineering curriculum. And so there is copying of what we're doing. We have also copied from others.
Yeah. Incidentally, Ranjit Daniel also advised IIT Madras on its bypass.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's another question. How difficult was it to convince the first batch of students about the new curriculum?
I think the convincing them about the curriculum was not really difficult. What was more difficult was convincing them to come here in the first place. In the first year, because they were admitted before they were admitted even before the campus was identified. So for the first year, they were in IIT Roorkee, and I think some of them hoped that they would spend 4 years in IIT Roorkee and graduate from there. So when they came here, some of them were very happy to be here in this mountain area. Some were a bit disappointed. So we had to work with them. But I'm pleased to say that many of them took up the challenge. For instance,
can you be quiet?
During my first few months, 3 first-year students came to my office and said, there's a new IIT Mandi and it doesn't have a website. We have developed a website. They opened their laptop and they showed me their website. I looked at it, made a few comments, and a few days later that went live as the first IIT Mandi website. And in fact, that website was managed by students for a number of years. Likewise, when we wanted to hire faculty, we decided that at that time all applications were through hard copy in all the other IITs. So we decided that let us make it online. And I spoke to some second year students whom I was teaching databases, and one of them said, I'll do it for you. And within a few months, he had developed an online faculty application form, which has been used to hire all our faculty since then. And in fact, it's been used by some other institutions also. So they got a tremendous, this pioneer batch got a tremendous experience, many of them who chose to take it.
And there's this question, what measures have you taken to attract young and bright faculty? You answered part of it, no? But what specific measures have you taken to attract?
Yeah, the specific measures are, one is of course having the USPs and being very clear that, for instance, at IIT Mandi, we don't have departments, we have broad schools. And so a person who graduates from a chemistry department over here joins the School of Basic Sciences and is not known as a chemist at all, is free to guide, to talk to physics people, to talk to biology people, to guide them and teach courses for them and so on. So this interdisciplinary ethos is something that many people do find attractive. We have given some, for instance, we've done some things like, since it's a remote place and people cannot find houses off campus, we have made all the faculty houses on campus a uniform size 3-bedroom. So even a young assistant professor, the moment he or she joins, they get a 3-bedroom flat, which is again something that is not there in older IITs. We have a fairly generous faculty research fund, which the institute gives about 1 lakh rupees per year, a seed grant and other things. Then we've taken, back in 2013, I think we started the school on campus, and the school is, the faculty have a lot of inputs into running that school, so they're quite happy with it. It's now a CBSE affiliated school. So we have done these things, these measures to try to attract faculty to come here. One of the things that we started doing fairly early is to hold interviews on our campus, so that when people come for the interview, they realize whether they like the place and be happy here, and people who are remote decide not to come.
Timothy, can you stop sharing the screen?
Yeah, sure.
There's one concern about the syllabus, and that is, just 1 second. One of the persons wants to know if introducing such practical courses so early and project-oriented courses takes away from education at the early stage. Doesn't the strategy of focusing on products throughout the curriculum compromise the development of strong fundamental and theoretical concepts at such a nascent stage for student learning?
There are two answers to that. One is that we don't compromise, and we have a healthy dose of rigorous theory in our courses. We do give them maths, physics, chemistry, and theoretical courses in their discipline and so on. That is there. It just goes hand in hand with the practical. Also, one of the reasons why we started, why we do this throughout is that when students come in to IIT, they've spent the last 3 years focusing on theoretical study of maths, physics, and chemistry, and little else. So we want to get them to overcome this disadvantage that they have, where they've not done practical work, hands-on work for a number of years, which normally children do during school. So that the other thing is that by working on practical projects right from the beginning, our students develop excitement, and that excitement stays with most of them through their 4 years. With the traditional engineering curriculum, students come in excited, and then for the first year or two, they are given only theoretical subjects, and they tend to get a bit burnt out and bored by the time they get to the more interesting things. We don't compromise on the education, and also and if you look at as I said, the jobs that our students take up, the university they go for higher studies, they're doing very well over there.
Yeah, you have I think one of the things that wasn't particularly noticed was the fact that you have 15% of humanities courses. That's a high percentage. And of course, I welcome that. In fact, the original Renaissance thinkers also thought so. They thought you needed both the natural and social sciences in order to produce anything in terms of unity in knowledge. So how did you manage to convince your faculty that 15% of the curriculum should be humanities? You know, we didn't succeed in IIT Madras. We ended up with 7%.
Yeah. So I think I had the advantage of two things. One, the young faculty who came in here, being young, were more open to change and doing things differently. And secondly, we had a few senior faculty who from other IITs, including IIT Madras, IIT Roorkee, IIT Delhi, and so on, who perhaps in their parent institution, they were not able to bring about changes. So they came here and helped us to make those changes. So that is something that, and of course, they also brought their experience and their wisdom of having taught for 10 or 20 years. So they helped make sure that our young faculty did not make serious mistakes in the curriculum.
Okay, there's one comment that says, as director at IIT Mandi, you seem to have quite a lot of independence overall to lead the institute. Is that true? Actually, I must say that the IIT system itself gives you a lot of freedom. But the question here, I think you can answer. Question is, does your remoteness give you more independence?
Well, so first of all, the IIT system, IITs do have tremendous, especially academic independence and autonomy. And even financially, if we bring in money for projects and so on, then we have a lot of freedom in how we use that. We get money from donations, etc., where again we have freedom. I think the remote location did help a bit because when we do something unusual, we're kind of below the radar, and people in Delhi and other places probably don't notice it until it's too late. Whereas if IIT Delhi were to try something, it would be much more noticed. So being remote also helped.
Okay, one of the participants wants a clarification on your method that says build new shift, and so on. How does it actually work in practice?
Well, the way it works in practice is that, for instance, we gave a contract for constructing some 56 buildings, including say about a dozen academic buildings and 40 odd residential buildings, including hostels and so on. Now, what we did with these 56 is that we identified a set of academic and residential buildings which are almost contiguous, and asked the contractor to deliver those first. So as soon as those were delivered, we occupied them, and they were partly isolated from the rest of the construction site, though there is a little overlap. So we kind of we staged the construction in such a way that we could occupy it, and the construction would continue in other parts of the campus.
Another question that says India, I mean, they can see the role of the central government, but what's the role of the state government in continuous improvement of the institute? Does it play a role? What's your interaction with the state government like?
Yeah. The state government plays a role in two ways. One is they provide the infrastructure of the region, the roads, the police force, the electricity, and so on. All of that is provided by the state government. The other more important way is that the state government the state government and the people are essentially customers for our research and development. And our faculty work quite closely with many state government agencies such as the Forest Department, the PWD, the Irrigation, Public Health, and so on, so they help us to define the problems of the region and then to solve it. We have also, over here, we have formed a group called Prayas, which is an IIT Mandi, which is a forum of the citizens and administration of Mandi district and IIT Mandi. So Prayas is essentially a vehicle by which we can learn about the problems and challenges faced by the people and help to come up with good solutions.
Also, don't you have a lot of interaction through the socially relevant projects?
Yes, yes.
We have in IIT Madras, you also have that.
Yeah, yeah, we certainly have a lot of interaction there. And then we have, since we are working a number of projects in agriculture, there again we interact with the state government departments as well as with the farmers in the locality.
Okay. There's a new question on the curriculum which says, what did you sacrifice when you introduced project-based learning? Essentially, can you discuss the things that were deleted from a conventional curriculum?
Okay. What we did is that we took the core in the discipline and we reduced that. Typically, the discipline core in most of the older IITs is about perhaps about 40 to 50 credits. We made ours 30 to 35 credits. So we reduced it there and we gave students a little more of free electives so that those who are passionately interested in their discipline can take it in their discipline. Those who want can take the free electives in something else, either some other discipline or the humanities. The other thing which we also realized is that as engineering is developing, engineering education, the undergraduate degree is becoming more of a basic degree. And so we want breadth over there. And specialization more and more is being done at the master's level. So that is the view that we take. Unlike, for instance, earlier when I did my 5-year BTech, we were highly specialized by the end of the BTech itself. But today we see that, and also many engineering students after getting a BTech, they work in something other than their discipline. A person who has a BTech in electrical engineering may work in WE for a little while, then he goes into computer science, then perhaps into management, and maybe even starts writing books or novels or something after some time. So we believe that a broad-based foundation is what's more important.
There is a bit of interdisciplinarity in that. So
Yeah.
very too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've all enjoyed your talk, really. And I also want to thank IITACB for doing this wonderful job of webinars, because it's really been, the response has been phenomenal. And I think overall, people have enjoyed, especially during this lockdown period, enjoyed the webinars. So thank you very much, Timothy, for a wonderful talk. And I think, meanwhile, some Manas Thakur has already sent to the panelists' website a YouTube video of your campus. Yes, he sent the link. Yeah. Must be one of your colleagues.
Yeah, he's a new faculty who joined from IIT Madras. He joined here last year.
Yeah, so your idea, your faculty seem to be really enthusiastic.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me hand this over to Sushila now.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Yeah, thanks very much, Prof. Ananth. Thank you very much, Professor Gonsalves. So today it's been a wonderful talk, taking us through a journey of converting an absolutely idyllic mountainside into an equally idyllic campus and the wonderful work that is being done. Just a few takeaways that I could kind of take back out of this session. Professor Ananth started by saying that a university is a center of research, teaching, and innovation, and also it needs to be socially relevant. And through your talk, Timothy, you took us through exactly how IIT Mandi has achieved all of that and is doing all of that. When you talked about the challenges, you said we benchmarked against the best, not just in India, but across the world. And that obviously is the reason we have an absolutely world-class campus at Mandi today. A few of the key basic tenets that you have used while setting up this institute: absolute focus, partnerships, interdisciplinary working and culture, and also engaging with the local community. It is already also very interesting to hear you say that that engagement has resulted not just in businesses and other contributions to the local society, but also very interestingly learning from the people, with the children take back with them, students can take back with them and apply in their own careers and lives. That's absolutely fascinating. You also talked about boundaries-less learning and what that means to the student, because yes, we don't do, all of us end up doing a lot of other things than what we studied at IIT. And so this has been wonderful. Thank you ever so much for your talk today, for your time. Prof. Ananth, thank you very much. It's been very valuable listening to your point of view as well. Professor Mishra, thank you for leading and bringing in your comments to this. To our listeners, we will be uploading the video into the IIT ACB YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to it. Our lectures are uploaded there. We should have it up by Monday or Tuesday, early next week. So please do look for it. And yes, please do join us every Saturday at this time. We have some very interesting talks lined up for you. So with this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushila, for a very good summary and also for arranging the whole thing. And thanks to everyone who attended and to all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you.